Today, really short notes here. We're going to talk the water cycle, so why don't you write this down? I think most of this was review. We've been kind of over it and maybe not officially gone over it, but it constantly comes up. The water cycle, the movement of water from land to the rivers and oceans to the atmosphere and back to land. What you have to realize is that water is not created or destroyed. We're constantly reusing it, and it's constantly changing form. The same water that you're drinking right now is the water that was here thousands of years ago. Okay? Let's say it rains today, okay, or it snows, okay, in the spring, so the water is in snow form. In the spring, it's going to melt. Some of it's going to seep into the groundwater, where it might stay until we pump it out and use it for something. Okay, you got a well in it and you pump it out. Some of it is going to evaporate and go into the air as water vapor. And then it's going to cool and fall as rain or snow or hail or something at some point. Some of it's going to go into a creek, which goes into a river, which goes into a bigger river, which will flow to the ocean. And it might stay there for a while. So it's just going to constantly change forms. Okay, the water you're drinking from the drinking fountain, okay, was drank before, most likely by something. Something drank that water. Okay, it went through them, it evaporated, and blah blah blah, and it's back to you. So what you need to know is that the water cycle, water isn't created or destroyed. It's just changing forms. I would probably write this down. Only Earth has the temperature ranges where we can get all three states of water to exist. We're lucky that our Earth has the temperature ranges where we can have it be cold enough for water to be a solid, kind of a middle temperature enough for it to be a liquid, and warm enough for it to be a gas. Other planets do not have that. The planets closer to the sun, Mercury, Venus, okay, if they had water, it would be probably a gas form because they're incredibly hot. If we're talking like Neptune or something way far away from the sun, its water would be in a solid because it's really cold. So we are right in between where we have all states of water. So just kind of an interesting little thing there. I would like you to write this down. Condensation. Water changing from a gas to a liquid. Water condenses and changes from a gas to a liquid. So if you have water vapor in the air and it cools off, a lot of times it's going to condense. That's what happens with clouds. If you get a warm, wet cloud and it goes higher in the atmosphere, it elevates, it's going to cool because the higher you go in the atmosphere, the cooler it gets, and that water is going to condense and fall as rain. If your glass, you have a glass of ice water, okay, it might be sweating on the outside. Well, that's condensation from the warm air on the outside of the glass getting cooled off. Another word that's probably good for you to know is transpiration. Evaporation of water from plants. Like when we sweat, that's perspiration. Okay, we have these little pores that are going to lose water, and when the water evaporates off our skin's surface, it's going to cool us. Well, plants have little pores in their leaves that are going to lose water, and that's called transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water from plants. Another term, infiltration, water getting absorbed into the ground. If you infiltrate something, you sink in. If you are like some kind of spy and you infiltrate into some group, that means you've gotten in. They've taken you in. I think you guys understand what runoff is. We won't worry about that. Water moving across the ground, not getting absorbed into the ground. So let's say today we had 10 inches of rain. Okay, if the ground wasn't frozen, some of it would sink in, the first maybe inch or two, but after that, the rest is going to just run off because the ground is saturated. It can't hold anymore, so it's just going to flow into ditches and streams and rivers and things like that. That's usually what happens when we have flooding, is the ground is saturated and we have runoff. Sometimes in the spring we get floods because the ground is still frozen, and then if we get a bunch of rain, the ground can't absorb any because it's frozen, and the water's going to run off. Evaporation, I'd probably write this down. Water changing from a liquid to a gas. With my turtle in the tank over there, after about a week I usually add a little water because some of it has evaporated. It changed from a liquid to a gas. The warmer a place is, the more water is going to evaporate. This was kind of interesting. So 97% of our water on Earth is saline, which is salt water, so oceans. 3% of it is fresh water. Of that 3%, about a third is groundwater, about 2/3 is in ice form, and of our surface water, 87% is lakes, 11 swamps, 2 rivers. So just thought that was kind of interesting to look at. You guys know what precipitation is. I won't worry about it. Water returning to the earth, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. It all just depends on the temperature. If it's above 32 degrees, it's going to be rain. If it's below, it could be snow, sleet. Hail is the updrafts. Another term, don't worry about too much, but there are some instances where a solid water turns straight into a water vapor. A solid turns straight into a gas, basically. Dry ice is an example of that. Dry ice is frozen carbon dioxide. And instead of it turning into a liquid carbon dioxide, it's going to go straight from a gas. So when you see dry ice and it's making like that cloud of fog, it's subliming. It's going from a solid to a gas. We'll call that good.